I'm supposed to be a lector in my church starting in a week or two. Is it okay for women to read the scripture out loud in church?
Is it proper for a woman to read out loud the scripture in church? I think it is. As you know, I don't personally believe in females filling the role of elders, simply because Paul gives qualifications for an elder, and they don't include women. But an elder is one thing. Someone reading the scripture or even evangelizing is an entirely different thing. An elder is somebody who disciples the church through biblical teaching, and a person just reading the Bible is not teaching anything except what the biblical writer himself is saying. So I don't think there'd be anything inappropriate about that, Mary.
Isn't there something in the scripture where it says women are not to speak out loud in the church?
Yes, that's in 1 Corinthians 14, but it's specifically talking to the Corinthian church about a problem they had in their church. You know, sometimes when we read the epistles, we forget that Paul is writing to churches that had actual situations that he's seeking to correct. And it would appear that in the Corinthian church, there was some disruptive behavior on the part of the women. And Paul did say, let your women keep silence in the church. It's not proper for them to speak, you know. And I don't think he's saying that women never have any role of speaking at all in the church, because actually a few chapters earlier in chapter 11, he indicates that he's got no problem with women who pray or prophesy with their head covered. Now, prayer might be private, but prophecy is public, and it's done in the church, according to Paul. And so Paul didn't mind women prophesying in the church or even praying in the church if their head was covered, which in that culture meant if they're in their proper order of submission to their husbands and so forth. But apparently there were also women in the church who were disruptive, and most commentators believe that the disruptive behavior was in the form of women speaking perhaps to their husbands or maybe to the preacher from the audience, from the congregation, and asking questions, because Paul says when he tells them to be quiet in the church, he says, ask your husbands if you have questions, ask them at home, and don't disturb the church with it. So it would appear that, as with many other things in the Church of Corinth, there were some things out of order, and one of those things was certain women who were, disturbing the worship time by interrupting with questions that they could ask at home. So it's in that context that Paul says, let your women keep silent in the churches. He's not saying that womanhood itself is a disqualification for making any kind of verbal contribution in the church service. At least that's how I understand it. I think most commentators would probably agree with what I'm saying, but though some do not. Some would say, women, they're just a lower class than men and shouldn't be allowed to talk, but I don't know very many Christians who hold that view, and the ones that do, I would have to disagree with.